This lesson is called Running the Range. After you've done the practical exercises with speeches and demonstrations and supervising of shooting, we want to make sure you leave here knowing you only do that the first time the kids shoot. After that, day 3 through 300, you're simply going to run the range. So we're going to show you how to do it. When you get ready to run the range, every day you should remind the students of those 2 important safety rules. The first one is the emergency whistle signal. Remember, if an emergency occurs on the range, they'll hear the whistle blow 5 or more times, like this. They hear that, they'll stop what they're doing, they'll re-rack their bow, and they'll walk behind the waiting line. If they're at full draw, ready to shoot, they'll ease the arrow forward, put the arrow in the quiver, re-rack the bow, and go behind the waiting line. Also remind them that we only shoot a bow when there's an arrow attached to the string, knocked on a string, and it's pointed in a safe direction towards the target. To shoot a bow without an arrow is called a dry fire. That can damage the bow, it can hurt the archer, or someone standing nearby. Ready? All right. All toes are behind the waiting line. I'm going to blow the whistle twice, which means get bow. Walk, please. Straddle the shooting line, bows on toes. Sometimes when the students see the bullseye for the first time, they forget some of these safety rules, so you need to remind them. Okay? All right, all bows are on toes. Using the 11 steps, go ahead and shoot the arrows in your quiver. Follow through reflex. That's it. That's it. Okay. That was a perfect example of an emergency. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. You eased the arrow forward, re-quivered, re-racked the bow, and walked behind the waiting line. Once all the students are behind the waiting line, I'm going to go resolve the emergency, and then we'll commence shooting again. The emergency has been resolved. Now we can commence shooting again. Get bow. And everybody's bows are on toes. Shoot your remaining arrows. Remember those 11 steps. That's it. How did it feel? Remember, when you're finished shooting, re-rack your bow and go back behind the waiting line. When you're finished shooting, re-rack the bow and go behind the waiting line. Now we're going to go get arrows. I want you to stop at the target line so I can explain how we score arrows before we pull them. We're walking. Stop at the target line. And now I'm going to explain how we score arrows before we pull them, okay? Remember, it's an 80 centimeter international style target. The scoring rings begin at 1 out here in the first white and go all the way to 10 in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And that's how they're scored. If an arrow is touching a line, it gets the higher value. It just merely touches that line, it gets the higher value. We score all the arrows before we touch any of them. If we touch an arrow to say that this is my arrow, before we've scored everything, we could affect the score in another arrow, especially if this were a paper target. So you score them all before you pull any of them. And then you start, once they've all been scored, then you can start with the nearest and the highest, just like we've always done, okay? So I want you to come forward here and score those 3 arrows and then pull them.
It's 5 and then 2 10s, so 25.
Very good. Okay, go ahead and safely pull those. Remember, one arrow flat on, there you go, and look back, there you go, that's it. Yeah. Flat and look back every time. Sometimes if you twist them, they go. Yeah, they're a little bit. There you go. Good. Okay. And re-quiver them while I stay here. Re-quiver the arrows. Go behind the waiting line. As soon as all the archers are behind the waiting line, I will once again look back here to make sure that everyone and everything is clear from behind the targets in the curtain, and then I'm the last one to return.